Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's Thursday with AARP Wisconsin. I am Amber Miller, your hostess, and please note that this broadcast is pre-recorded. But if you have any questions for our guest today, you could still feel free to post them on our Facebook.com page or our YouTube page, and we will make sure that we get to those. Before we get to our lovely guest today, please remember, if you're looking for information about AARP Wisconsin, including upcoming events, you could visit our website at aarp.org/WI. Also, even though we are not having in-person events at the moment, there is still opportunity for you to volunteer with us. At AARP Wisconsin, we're always looking to add to our volunteer pool. There are many opportunities still available virtually, and you can find additional information at the website below, which is aarp.org/I-want-to-volunteer. You'll find additional information there, including an application if you would like to apply to be a volunteer with us. We also, please remember, have the AARP Friendly Voice initiative, which launched last year. This is open to any age, and you do not need to be an AARP member. You could go to the information below or the phone number to request a friendly volunteer with AARP to call you. It could be daily, weekly, or monthly, and sometimes it's just really nice to hear a friendly voice on the other end. You could request this for yourself or for a loved one, and there is no cost. Today we have two special guests with our AARP Wisconsin Advocacy team, and they have been on our show numerous times, but we're happy to have them today, who are going to be talking a little bit about storytelling and the importance of doing that. So I would love to have Lisa and Helen join me. Hello, ladies.
Hi.
Hello, Amber.
Good to see you guys. Thank you guys so much. I know you're very busy this week, so that's why we're recording it, but we just always love to have you on the show. You always have such great information to share with our viewers. And once again, this is pre-recorded, but please, if you have any questions, you could definitely ask them on our Facebook.com page or our YouTube page. So today we're talking about storytelling, and I know people are like, oh, like storytelling from my family. And we're going to be taking this kind of on a different kind of route. So of course we ask the advocacy team to join us once a month. That's why the ladies are here with us today to discuss what's happening with Congress and the state legislature. So why should our viewers care about this policy? And Lisa, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. Well, Amber, first let me say for both of us that we really appreciate you inviting us once a month to come on and talk about policy. And, sometimes people think, oh, that sounds really boring. We're going to talk about policy. What the heck is that? But policy is one of those things that actually impacts every one of us in virtually everything that we do all during the day. And it can be policy that's made at the local level with your city council. It can be policy made at the state level with the state legislature, or at the national level with our Congress. And really the idea of policy is it impacts your life. It impacts, whether there's a street light at the end of your street. It impacts how much you might have to pay for, your insurance. It impacts a whole host of things. And the thing that's interesting about it is when AARP decides what policies we're going to support, we look at that impact and we look to hear what our members are telling us about their lives and about things that are going well in their lives or things that can be fixed in their lives. And so, for example, we're going to focus a lot today on what's happening at the state level in state policy with our state legislature and the budget that's happening. We've picked 5 priorities to focus on. And I know we'll talk about these a little bit more, but just, these are things that impact everybody's lives. Broadband, caregiving, the expansion of Badger Care, the cost of prescription drugs, and retirement security. If you think about your own life, all of those pieces are important to you in one way or another. And policy is currently being made at the state level that can impact all of those things. That was a really long answer for why should people care about policy.
No, it's not. And I know we had Helen on a few weeks back talking about the 5 priorities, and I do agree with you. One out of those 5, if not all 5, are super important, no matter if it pertains to you, your neighbors, somebody within your community. So it's really great to know that AARP definitely is looking out for the community for 50 plus, and even if you're not, over the age of 50, how this really can affect our everyday life. And Helen, so we'll get to you. So the Wisconsin budget, because you were on talking about Joint Finance Committee not too long ago. So the Wisconsin budget has, of course, big impact on people's lives. So where are we in that budget process?
Well, we're in the budget process in the step. The first step is the governor introduces it, done, over with. The second step is it then gets out for public comment and public hearing. And we just finished that. But I really want to talk about it a little because it was doing the public hearings and the public outreach where people wrote in, both in terms of telling how the proposals in the budget would affect them personally and what it meant to them, what the problem in their life was, and how the budget could solve it. And those stories came in a lot of ways. Some of them came in writing, and some of them came in through people testifying. And I'm going to have one of the clips. We're going to play one of the clips right now. Noreen Holmes testified about her experience in caregiving. And so watch the difference it makes when it's not statistics or abstract things, but really a person's life. So I think we've got Noreen queued up. So let's hear her, what she had to say about caregiving.
Good morning. I'm Noreen Holmes from La Crosse, and today I'm speaking in support of making a tax credit available to family caregivers. My mom loved her home in La Crosse. She wanted to stay in her own home so she could enjoy her flowers and her good neighbors. She wanted to be around her own things, her kitchen, her knickknacks, her many photos of grandkids. First one hip broke, and then the other as osteoporosis progressed. I can tell you firsthand how becoming a caregiver grows on you little by little. My mom began to use a walker, adding a commode in the bedroom, bars in the bathroom. Soon she needed a ramp and a wheelchair. Medicare pays for some adaptive equipment, but not all. My mom's only income was Social Security, and real estate taxes gobbled up 21% of her income. As she had to pay the typical household expenses we all pay, her money was stretched. Twice, when my mom's installment for taxes was due, I paid the bill as she could no longer afford it. My mom passed away well into her 97th year, but she remained in her own home until the last 30 days of her life, when I could no longer provide the assistance she needed. There are more than 600,000 family caregivers in Wisconsin. Our aging population will increase the need for home care and personal care workers, and we already have a shortage. If we do not support family caregivers, we may have to provide the $7 billion worth of caregiving services they provide. With modest supports like this tax credit, we can help caregivers continue to meet the needs of their loved ones. Thank you.
So what I loved about that, Helen, is that whole storytelling piece. It's firsthand experience that Noreen, who's one of our volunteers, experienced with her mom. And to me, that gets your point across a little better than statistics and analytics where people are like, huh?
I think that's true. I think you listen to Noreen's story and say, oh, that's very similar to what happened with my cousin or, my neighbor had to help pay for this or that because something didn't happen. And you really have the policymakers' attention on a personal level. You also measure not only the financial impact, but you get a sense of the emotional impact that it has on a person, because the way they present their story shows that it is that obviously this person cared for her mother, was willing to make the financial sacrifice, had a level of competency to do all these things, but still needs help because of that. So I think the impacts are really much greater when it's an individual story. I'm going to also ask to play another clip. This one is on prescription drugs. And this person talks not only about her mother, as we often do, telling a story for other people, but she also talks about how it impacts her directly, so that prescription drug high costs is not a generational issue. It's an everybody issue. So let's listen to Pauline.
My name is Pauline Smith. I am here to testify on prescription drug costs. I thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I am an RN who has worked extensively with older populations, often struggling to pay for their medications. They cut costs by cutting pills in half, skipping, buying when having no money, or when they do have money, or just not filling the prescription. Drugs prevent the stroke, heart attacks, chronic disease, lung issues, COPD, and diabetes. I cannot tell you how often I've been on call or triaging and get a call that a patient is in the ER and needs to go to the ER. They are then hospitalized, go to skilled care for rehab, and then back home. And then the cycle repeats itself. It costs the healthcare system a lot. I also have two personal examples. First, my mother is 84. She uses many medications and needs to go on a blood thinner to prevent further strokes. Warfarin can be difficult to manage due to drug interactions, diet, and illnesses that can cause blood to be too thin or too thick. There is need for blood drugs to manage dosing changes. Eliquis tabs need no lab draw and keeps blood thinned more evenly to prevent bleeding or stroke. Drug D cost Eliquis is $47 per month versus warfarin at $4 per month. Doctors were ordered the cheaper drug. My mother had resources, others do not, and they will get the warfarin and probably some hospitalizations. I have seasonal allergic asthma to the point that I'm on immunotherapy. I'm using Grastec sublingual. My cost, drug D cost is $346.89. Plan pays $123.44. I pay $223.45 per month for 6 months until I can get on the injections. I must pay for inhalers, EpiPen, eye drops, nasal spray, antihistamine, and montelukast. I am managing, but many of my patients would not be able to afford this. Please keep the budget those measures that will keep the drug costs affordable. We can no longer continue the healthcare system costs due to people not able to follow the medication regimes, which manage and prevent further health problems, costing the system billions. Thank you.
And in that, Pauline not only told her story about the dollars and cents about how drug costs affect the buying and purchasing, but what it meant also to make choices about the quality of the product and the ease of which you could use it. And she also pointed out that she knew what she was talking about because she was a nurse. So she added her professional experience to her personal experience. So in the course of 2 minutes, by telling those stories and saying who she was and her claim on those stories, she really had a great impact, I think.
And
Yep.
Helen, I just wanted to add in, and you kind of mentioned this, but I think it's really important to point out that both of those clips were only 2 minutes long. That was all the time that was allowed. But look at the impact that can be given in just a couple of minutes. In fact, it's better. You don't want a long, meandering, story that takes 10 minutes. You kind of lose the point. These were short, simple, sweet, and really impactful. and just people talking about their own personal experiences. And I think that really is a lot of the impact of storytelling in just 2 minutes.
Correct. And what I liked about both of those stories, it also kept my attention. 2 minutes I think is great, but also it's heartfelt, and we know that other people have similar stories to Noreen and Pauline, if I'm not mistaken, and how it did come from straight from the heart, but also that they have experience, they're living with this, and how are people paying for the prescriptions. And that's why I really appreciate what you ladies do in advocacy. So I really appreciate that. So Lisa, what, I think we kind of talked a little bit about it, and Helen, of course, chime in. So what makes a good story?
You know, I think if you're looking to structure your own story, and all of us have stories to tell about the things in our lives that we'd like to see improved, you can really start with 3 short and simple pieces to cover. First is the problem. What's the thing that's bugging you? What's the thing that you want to see changed? We heard Pauline talk about the high cost of drugs. We heard Noreen talk about the challenges of caring for an aging parent. So first, define the problem. How is that problem playing out in your life? And that second part is really the second thing. How does it impact you? What does it mean for your life? Does it mean you're trying to help your mom by paying her property taxes, as Noreen talked about? Does it mean, you're having to figure out how to pay for drugs, if you're having to split drugs in cost? So you have to say, like, okay, well, drug prices are really too high. What does that mean for me? So second thing is how it impacts you. And then the third thing really is, you're hopefully in telling a story around policy, you're pushing for a solution. How would that solution impact you? How would it make your life better? How would it make the lives better of lots of people around you? So really those 3 things are the bones of any good story. And Helen, I don't know if you want to add some pieces into that.
Well, I think those are the fundamental pieces, and it makes it relatable. It makes it so that when you hear that story, it reminds you of your neighbor or your cousin or something that happened to you. And if you were talking to this person, you would probably match them with a story by saying, I understand, this is how much I'm paying in drugs, or my mother-in-law had the same problem. That's what is important. It hits a person where they can relate to the story, which makes them think about the problem and move towards the solution.
And Helen, why do we want you to share the story, and how can people share their stories with AARP Wisconsin?
Well, I want to tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
Those people did a good job when they were at the public hearings. But the budget argument goes on. So we're going to be talking to the legislature all through this process, and all through every legislative process, whether it's the budget or whether it's other legislation. We're going to be talking to them about these same problems until we get to a solution. So it helps if you tell your story to them, if we tell the story on your behalf. And we want to know the stories because we don't just need the legislators to hear this. We get requests from newspapers all the time asking if there's somebody in their community that's affected by this. We put up little clips on our AARP website, the Facebook page, where you people are now, talking about some of the problems and asking people to call the legislators. But when you call a legislative office, it's much more effective to say, I know you're working on a bill about drugs. This is what it means to me. This is what I want you to do. Than to call up and say, the ladies from AARP told me I should tell you to support the drug legislation. Mm-hmm. The fact that they can relate to you as one of their constituents, the fact that the newspaper can say, here's somebody in our community, the fact that the Facebook post, somebody looks at it and says, oh, that's very similar to what was done to my cousin, you go ahead and you cause a ripple effect of people. Your story is the start point of other people thinking about this and moving to a solution. You know, and yes, then all the wonks will get together and they'll get the statistics out and say, oh, Amber isn't the only person having this problem. Or some politician will say, I got 15 phone calls on this, maybe I need to do something about it. But it really starts with that personal touch of, I'm a member of your community, I am your constituent, I have this problem, or I'm aware it doesn't have to be your story. It can be your neighbor's story who perhaps can't speak for themselves, or it could be somebody who's too shy, or it could be somebody where you're aware of the problem who can be solved and they're so overwhelmed by the problem they can't even talk about it. It doesn't matter. It just matters that the story is true, that it supports the policy change that's needed, and that we get it into the right ears so that it makes a difference.
And then, Helen, how can people share their stories with AARP Wisconsin?
Well, you know, I'm going to end up saying the thing we always say, which is you can start by going to our webpage. We do have a form to fill out there. If you fill out the form and you give us the little basics of your story, you will be in contact. We would not share your story without asking your permission to do so. You know, if you have a story, but you and you think it's important, but you don't want your name used or you don't want to talk to the press, you can say, you can use my story. And then Lisa or I in a meeting could say something like one of our members said. If you're willing to talk to a legislature, we might encourage you to do that. If you're willing to let us refer people from, say, the radio when they're doing a story on that, or a newspaper person, how much you're willing to share will give you a chance. And, you know, if your story is long and rambly and you say, I don't know how to tell my story in a concise way, like Lisa says, I want it in 2 minutes, we'll help you with that. We have a good sense of what pushes people's buttons. So if you go ahead and you leave some information on our website, you'll get a follow-up contact from us. And we'll move forward from there, and we'll continue to use the stories. And, you know, if you're one of our stories on one of our campaigns where we're successful, it would be nice to do a follow-up story saying, this is why it made a difference, and this is how I helped make it happen.
And Lisa, before we wrap up the show, did you have any final comments or anything else to add to what Helen just said?
No, the only thing I think I'll mention is that, you know, I think so often many of us think we don't really have a story, right? You read, you know, in national newspapers, you see in the national news these things like with just horrific stories that people have. Oh, somebody's drug costs are $10,000 a month. Okay, your story doesn't have to be that huge. It can just be, hey, the cost of my drugs went up by $50 and, you know, my social security check only went up by 10, so I don't know how I'm going to make up that difference. We all have stories to share. I think that's the one thing to remember is we're all impacted by some of these issues. So don't think your story is too small to share. Nobody's story is too small, and we'd love to hear from as many people as possible.
And as Helen said, the best way to tell your story, the first step would be to go to the AARP Wisconsin website, fill out some information. And once again, there's no story that's too little. And if you have a very long story, the advocacy team will kind of show you a way that maybe you can condense it a little bit, still get your point across. But as you know, the clips that we saw earlier, just really great stories within such a short period of time, but still really got their point across. So ladies, of course, as always, we always appreciate you coming on to the show. You just have really good information to share with our viewers. So I want to thank you again for joining us today.
Well, we're
Thanks
always
so
delighted
much.
to be here.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Of course, we'll see you ladies very soon. Thank you. And if you are watching this in replay, please also feel free to share this on your facebook.com or share the link on the YouTube page. And also, if you have yet to, please subscribe to our YouTube page at the AARPWI. For next week's show, something a little different. We're very excited. It is National Rescue Dog Week. So we're going to be talking to an organization, hopefully maybe even see some puppies, you never know. So that will be next Thursday, May 20th. It'll be a live show at noon, so please join us then. We also have some upcoming events that we would like to share with you. So, of course, the AARP Disrupt Aging Book Club. So chapters 3 and 4 will be May 18th at 10:30 a.m. Also, something very interesting and new, and hopefully you got some information about it, is the AARP Wisconsin Passport to Outdoors. We're going to be launching that this month, and our first workshop consists of How Old is Too Old to Paddle with Dick Silberman, and he has such a really great, intriguing story about when he started paddling, if I'm not mistaken, in his 80s. So we're excited about that show. Definitely join us then. And then May 20th, the Girlfriend Special Virtual Happy Hour, all about mental health. All of these are free. You can visit the website below or dial the 1-877 number to register. We also, May 19th is when applications are due for the 5th round of funding for Small Dollar Big Impact. It is a small grant up to $1,000 that nonprofits, other organizations can apply for if you have a really cool, interesting, and innovative idea on ways to impact your community for up to $1,000. You can find more information below, including past winners if you're looking for some ideas on what people applied for, which is aarp.org/WI, capitalize SDBI. So I want to thank you guys again for joining us today. Please also remember this is pre-recorded, but if you would like to post any comments or questions on our facebook.com page or YouTube page, we will make sure to get back to and answer those. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you May 20th at the next show. And until then, be safe.